Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to give you that shortcut, that way to understand the invisible structures shaping basically every conversation you have. Think office meetings, policy debates, you name it.
Exactly. Today, we're peeling back that conscious layer of language. We're going straight to, well, almost the operating manual for the human mind. It's a deep dive into the cognitive science of communication, really leaning on the work of linguist George Lakoff.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with a scene, something maybe familiar. Imagine you're in charge of some organizational change, right? You get the team together for a stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
And someone, maybe a manager, introduces a new efficiency thing by saying, look, we need to make sure we're not wasteful with our resources.
Okay. And right there, the communication's kind of gone off the rails, even though the intention is good, right? They want efficiency, cost savings.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
But that word wasteful, it doesn't just describe something, it immediately triggers this whole powerful and maybe even punitive psychological frame.
A punitive frame. So, based on the research, what's actually happening in people's heads when they hear that?
It connects directly to what Lakoff calls the strict father moral model. Using wasteful implies a kind of moral failing in whoever's listening. Carelessness, maybe lack of discipline, even bad character.
So instead of thinking, how can we be more efficient?
Exactly. They're thinking, uh-oh, who's getting blamed, who's in trouble? They're on the defensive. You've accidentally dropped a moral judgment bomb when you just wanted to talk about, optimizing workflow.
And that's really the core of what we're exploring today, isn't it? We think we're being logical, factual, but unconsciously we're setting off these huge, deep mental structures, these frames.
Mm-hmm.
And these frames dictate how information lands, how it's understood, how people react. Understanding this, well, it changes everything. Doesn't matter if you're managing a team, trying to get a law passed, or just arguing for something in your community.
And our mission today really is to make this super practical. We're translating the cognitive science into actual things you can do. By the end of this deep dive, you'll walk away with 2 specific, ready-to-use scripts. Things you can try out in a conversation, like today, to actually start asserting the frame you want.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning then, with the big idea that really underpins all of Lakoff's work. This core revelation about thought itself.
Yeah, for centuries, we've kind of operated under this, 18th century Enlightenment view that thinking is conscious, rational, purely logical, literal.
And that idea is basically the foundation for a lot of Western government economics.
And according to decades of cognitive science, it's almost completely wrong. The sources we're drawing on are really clear. Something like 98% of all our thinking happens unconsciously.
98%, that's huge.
It's massive. And it's not purely logical or unemotional either. Actually, emotion is necessary for rational thought. You need it to figure out what's good or bad, to even set goals. And reason itself is physical. It's embodied.
Okay, so if that old Enlightenment model is out, what replaces it? What are the, say, 4 key concepts from the source material we absolutely need to get our heads around right now?
Okay, 4 pillars. First, frames. These aren't abstract ideas. They are physical neural circuits in your brain, mental structures.
Like pathways.
Exactly. Pathways strengthened by repetition. They define institutions, roles, situations. Think of the word surgery. What pops into your head?
Hospital, surgeon, patient, operating room, maybe that antiseptic smell?
Right, that whole package deal, that's the frame. Every single word we use is defined relative to the frames it kicks into gear.
Okay, pillar 1, frames. What's next?
Second, metaphors. And crucially, these aren't just fancy ways of talking. They are fundamental mechanisms of thought.
How so?
They're actual neural connections across different brain regions. They let you understand something abstract, like love or policy, by mapping it onto something concrete and physical, like a journey or a building.
So that's why we say things like, our relationship is at a crossroads, or we need to build a strong foundation for this policy.
Precisely. You're using the journey metaphor for love, the building metaphor for policy. It's baked into how we reason.
Makes sense. Third pillar.
Third, embodied cognition. This one's super important and often missed. Concepts are physically tied to how our bodies work, how we move, how we perceive.
Can you give an example?
The classic one is more is up. Why do we think more is up?
Because when you pour water in a glass, the level goes up. Pile things up, the pile gets higher.
Exactly. It comes directly from physical experience, and this extends everywhere. Happiness is up, I'm feeling up. Sadness is down, I'm feeling low. Power is up, she's higher up in the company. Our abstract concepts are mapped onto physical reality.
So understanding that physical basis is key to communication.
Absolutely. You have to get that the mind uses the body's experience to make sense of the world.
Okay, frames, metaphors, embodied cognition. What's the fourth?
Fourth, moral models. These are the really high-level frames. They structure our entire worldview, our moral reasoning. Lakoff identifies two main competing ones.
These are the big ones, right? The strict father
And the nurturant parent. The strict father model values hierarchy, obedience, individual discipline, think self-reliance, punishment for wrongdoing.
Okay.
The nurturant parent model values empathy, care, social responsibility, think interconnectedness, helping others, systemic solution.
You're saying all political ideas, even ones that seem unrelated, fit into one of these.
Pretty much. Things like gun rights, environmental policy, tax cuts, social programs, they're all framed within one of these overarching moral systems. Understanding which system is active is key to understanding someone's position.
Wow. Okay, those four are huge. Frames, metaphors, embodiment, moral models. Which brings us, I think, to the most critical, maybe the most counterintuitive point.
Yeah, the big one. Negating a frame activates it.
Say it again. Negating a frame.
Activates it. Strengthens it, actually. It's a physical thing in the brain. You cannot argue effectively against someone else's frame. You have to build and assert your own positive frame first.
So just saying that's not true or we're not X actually backfires.
Massively. Because arguing against their frame just makes the listener think about their frame more. You're reinforcing the very neural circuits you want to weaken.
Okay, this sounds, well, exhausting, but also fundamentally important. Why does this happen? What's the mechanism?
It's that classic example. Don't think of an elephant.
Right.
What immediately happens when I say that?
I immediately picture an elephant. Probably a purple one now, juggling tennis balls, thanks to the outline.
Exactly. To understand the negation don't, your brain first has to activate the concept being negated elephant. So even denying it makes you think about it. And repetition, even negative repetition, just digs that neural pathway deeper.
And this isn't just some lab experiment finding. This is real-world strategy, especially in politics.
Oh, absolutely. The sources point out very clearly that certain political strategists and think tanks train people specifically not to use their opponent's language, not even to deny it.
Why? Because it's like free advertising.
Precisely. If you keep saying it's a myth that X is true, you're still putting X out there. You're repeating the myth, strengthening its presence in people's minds, even while trying to debunk it. They understand this cognitive reality.
Let's make this concrete. The classic case study from the sources. Taxation. How did one side manage to frame taxes so negatively, almost without ever arguing about, say, the value of roads or schools?
They did it with two words. Tax relief.
Tax relief. Okay.
Think about the word relief. What does relief imply?
That something bad, something oppressive or painful has stopped. An affliction, maybe?
Exactly, an affliction. A burden. So tax relief implicitly frames taxation itself as an affliction, something you need relief from. And that slots perfectly into that strict father model we talked about. The strict father model emphasizes individual discipline and earning your way. Taxes, in this frame, become the government arbitrarily taking away what you earn through your hard work. It punishes success. Relief from that punishment feels morally right within that frame.
You're just repeating that phrase, tax relief, it just drills that frame home.
It does. The repetition was incredibly effective. The sources show how this phrase was used constantly, day after day, by key political figures.
Until it became normalized.
Until even major newspapers like the New York Times started using tax relief on the front page, without quotes, just as the neutral term for tax cuts.
Wow. So once the media adopts the language,
it becomes cognitively invisible. It's just how you talk about that policy. But every time a journalist, even aiming for neutrality, uses that term, they are physically strengthening the taxation as affliction frame in every reader's brain.
So this means if your response is simply, no, taxes aren't an affliction, or we need taxes, you've kind of already lost because you're still fighting on their turf using their frame.
You're reinforcing their frame just by arguing against it using their terms. So if the dominant frame is taxation as affliction, what's the necessary counterframe?
It has to come from the other moral model, right? The nurturant parent view.
Exactly. That view emphasizes collective effort, shared responsibility, building things together. So the counterframe has to be about taxes funding the Commonwealth. Taxes are for protection and empowerment.
Protection and empowerment, not just paying for stuff.
Right. The implicit truth here is that private enterprise, individual success, cannot exist without the public foundation that taxes build.
That's a critical point. It's not charity, it's the bedrock. What specific things should we be highlighting to make that concrete, beyond just roads and schools?
We need to get specific. The sources mention the court system. Something like 90% of court cases are commercial or corporate law, essential for enforcing contracts, right?
The courts? What else?
The entire banking system. It only works because of public structures like the Federal Reserve, Federal Deposit Insurance. Think about innovation infrastructure. The GPS network developed by the military, funded by taxpayers. The Patent Office, protecting inventions. Even the Internet itself grew out of the taxpayer-funded ARPANET.
Right, these massive public investments that private companies then build upon.
Absolutely. So if you frame taxes as the membership dues we pay for the civilization that makes wealth creation possible, suddenly asking for tax relief sounds absurd, like asking for rule of law relief or safe roads relief. It reframes the whole debate.
Okay, this leads us perfectly into a really practical tool for pushing back against misinformation without accidentally amplifying the bad frame. The truth sandwich.
Yes, the truth sandwich. It comes directly out of this cognitive science. The discipline is lead with your truth, your frame.
What's the formula again?
Simple but crucial. 1, lead with the truth, ideally linked to a shared value. 2, briefly, and I mean briefly describe the misinformation. But crucially, don't use their catchy, sticky language. Just state the factual inaccuracy plainly. 3, reiterate the truth, ending strongly on your frame, maybe with a concrete image.
Okay, let's practice this. Let's take on one of the most powerful narratives out there, especially in American culture. The myth of the self-made man. That fits the strict father model perfectly, right? Ignores the Commonwealth completely.
Totally. So step 1, lead with the truth and a shared value. We start by acknowledging the value of achievement, but reframing how it happens.
So something like,
You could say, we all admire ambition and hard work. They're definitely important. But the truth is no business person succeeds entirely alone. Real success is built on the foundation of the Commonwealth. The system's created and maintained by all of us as taxpayers.
okay, so you affirm the value, hard work, but immediately connect it to the collective foundation. Step 2, handle the myth briefly. No catchy phrases.
Right. You just neutrally state the opposing idea. Now, there are some claims out there, you see them online sometimes, suggesting wealth is created purely by individuals working in isolation, with no help from public resources or social structures. Plain, attributive, move on.
Got it. No repeating rugged individualist or whatever. Then step 3, reiterate the truth, drive it home with a concrete image.
This is where you anchor your frame. You could bring in Warren Buffett's famous point. He's been very clear. Without the organized, regulated, taxpayer-supported banking and stock market systems, he'd be nowhere.
Didn't he say he'd be a failure maybe in Bangladesh or something?
Something like that, yeah. It highlights the dependence, you could say.
Yeah.
As Buffett points out, without the systems Americans built together, individual talent often can't flourish. The American taxpayer doesn't just enable private success, they make it possible. That image the banking system as a public resource sticks better than just abstract talk about infrastructure.
That shift, leading with your moral frame, feels critical. Because facts alone, as you said, just get slotted into whatever frame the listener already has in their head.
Exactly. The frame provides the context, the why it matters.
Right.
Without that, facts just float away or get twisted.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, as you say. We're moving from the theory into the toolkit, a set of practical micro tools, things you can actually use derived from this science in, that tough meeting or even just talking to your uncle over the holidays.
And this toolkit is vital because so many people, especially smart people, trained in fields that value pure evidence, lawyers, scientists, data analysts, managers, fall into that trap of relying on Enlightenment reason.
They think the facts will speak for themselves.
Right. They lead with statistics. 47 million people lack healthcare and expect that sheer number to persuade. But the research shows it often fails. Why? Because you haven't given the listener the moral reason to care about those 47 million people first. You haven't activated the right frame.
Okay, let's look at tool 1, the value first open.
Right. This is the direct antidote to that statistics first mistake, what it is. You consciously, deliberately start any potentially contentious conversation by stating a shared value or moral premise, something you know everyone in the room can nod along to. Then you introduce the facts or the proposal.
When should you use this?
Use it whenever you expect your audience might be operating from that just the facts mode, or when you anticipate defensiveness, especially if you suspect they might be coming from a strict father perspective.
Yeah.
You're trying to build a cognitive bridge first, not just fire data points at them.
And the source basis for this is that failure of facts alone.
Yeah. People need that moral anchor first. A shared value based on, say, empathy or fairness or safety, that gives the subsequent facts a place to land meaningfully.
Okay, give us a script. Let's say we're talking about school funding or teacher salaries, instead of leading with budget numbers.
You start with the shared goal. Try something like, look, we both want classrooms where every single student can focus, where they can reach their potential, feel safe, feel supported.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
the nod. So, with that shared goal in mind, here's a plan that helps us achieve that for all our kids. Now you've framed the budget discussion not as spending, but as an investment in a shared, positive outcome. Focused, successful kids.
And the big watch out for here.
The massive temptation is to jump straight into rebuttal. Someone says something you disagree with, and your instinct is to say, no, you're wrong, here's why. Resist that urge. Rebuttal just triggers and strengthens their frame. Bridge first, affirm the shared value, then gently assert your frame.
Okay, let's do a quick exercise with this, our 30-second frame spotter. The word is one we hear constantly, especially in business or politics. Regulation.
Okay, regulation. When you hear that, your frame detector should immediately light up. What are the two competing frames?
Well, from a certain business perspective, or maybe the strict father view, it's framed as a burden, right? It stifles innovation, costs money, limits freedom, it's like chains.
Exactly, an external negative force. And the other frame, the public interest or nurturant parent view.
That sees regulation as protection. It's what we do together to stop bad actors, ensure clean air, safe products, fair competition. It's about care, safety, the common good.
Right. So if you want to assert that nurturant parent frame using the value first principle, what do?
You probably avoid the word regulation altogether because it's already loaded.
Precisely. You reframe it positively. You shift to talking about public protections or safeguards.
I might say, you could say.
We prioritize public protections because ensuring citizens are safe from, say, corporate negligence, especially when it comes to necessities like clean air and water, that's a fundamental responsibility. You've activated a frame of safety and community well-being, completely bypassing the negative burden frame associated with regulation.
Okay, that's tool one.
Yeah.
Moving on to tool two, the moral models lens, understanding the why. This feels like the decoder ring for political arguments.
It really is. It helps you understand why someone might hold a collection of policy positions that, on the surface, seem completely contradictory, like being against environmental rules but for really strict criminal sentencing.
Right, you mentioned that earlier, opposing abortion but supporting a flat tax, maybe backing gun rights but wanting tort reform. How do those hang together?
What this tool is, it's the practice of diagnosing which underlying moral model, strict father, SF, or nurturant parent, NP, is driving someone's position on an issue.
When do you use it?
Use it whenever someone's policy stances seem illogical or inconsistent to you. Because chances are, once you see it through the lens of their dominant moral model, usually SF in these seemingly contradictory cases, the internal logic becomes perfectly clear, even if you disagree with it.
Okay, let's dig into the source basis here, especially the strict father model's underlying logic. It's not just about being tough, is it?
No, it's deeper. The sources suggest it often has roots, sometimes even theological ones, in the idea that people or children are born inherently undisciplined, maybe even flawed or bad. They must be subjected to strong external discipline to build character and learn right from wrong.
And the father figure is the ultimate moral authority.
Yes, the authority whose rules are absolute and necessary for developing that internal discipline. And crucially, success in life prosperity is seen as the direct reward for having developed that discipline.
Okay, so if success is the reward for discipline, then failure.
Failure, poverty, unemployment, addiction is seen as evidence of a lack of discipline, a moral failing. And therefore, the person experiencing that failure kind of deserves it. It's the natural consequence of their lack of character.
Which explains the opposition to social programs.
Exactly. From the SF perspective, social programs are morally hazardous. They give people things they haven't earned through discipline. This is seen as undermining the very mechanism, suffering the consequences, that's supposed to build character. It encourages dependency and weakness.
Wow. Okay, I see how that logic extends beyond just welfare then. What about things like markets or regulations?
Right. The sources explain that in this model, the free market itself is often viewed as a kind of natural disciplinary force. It rewards the disciplined and punishes the undisciplined.
So anything that interferes with the market is bad.
Yes, because it interferes with that moral sorting mechanism. So heavy taxes. Bad punishes earned success. Regulations. Bad limit the freedom needed to exercise discipline and restrict the market's power. Unions. Bad interfere with the employer's authority. Lawsuits against corporations. Tort reform. Bad undermine market outcomes. See how it all fits.
Yeah, suddenly that cluster of policies, flat taxes, deregulation, anti-union tort reform, makes perfect, consistent sense within that specific moral framework.
Even if you fundamentally reject the premises, you can see the internal logic. And understanding that logic is key to communicating effectively.
So how do we use this understanding? What are the scripts for talking across these moral divides without just triggering defenses?
Okay, a couple of approaches. If you need to connect with someone clearly operating from an SF frame, you might acknowledge their values using their language. Something like, clear rules and earned rewards are definitely essential for accountability and success. You validate the importance of rules and earning, but then you can pivot maybe towards ensuring the rules are fair for everyone. If you're speaking to someone more aligned with the NP model, you reinforce those values. Care, growth, and shared responsibility need to be our priorities. That way, we ensure everyone gets a fair shot, which ultimately benefits the whole community.
And the watch out for here is critical.
Don't use your moral language on someone deep in the other frame. If you lead with, we need more empathy to someone in a strong SF mode, they might hear, we need more weakness and dependency. It shuts down the conversation immediately. You're talking past each other.
This brings up that crucial point about biconceptuals. Most people aren't 100% one or the other, right?
Exactly. Most of us have both the strict father and the nurturant parent models active in our brains. We just apply them to different areas of our lives. Lakoff calls these people biconceptuals.
Can you give another example? Maybe more detailed than the classic Reagan Democrat example?
Sure. Think about someone who is fiercely individualistic about federal taxes. Keep the government out of my wallet. SF. But in their local town, they're deeply involved in community efforts. They organize neighbors to help after a storm. They push the local council for better shared resources like parks or libraries. They believe strongly in mutual support within their community. NP.
So SF for the big and personal system, but NP for the local face-to-face stuff.
Often, yes. The SF model might govern interactions with strangers or abstract entities like the economy, while the NP model governs relationships within their perceived in-group family, neighbors, church, union buddies.
So the strategy for talking to a biconceptual isn't to convert them, but to
find overlap. Find where their nurturant parent model is active, affirm that, and then try to gently bridge from there. You try to expand the circle of who counts as being in the group deserving of nurturance.
How would that sound in practice?
You might start by genuinely acknowledging their community spirit. I really admire how much you care about our neighbors, how everyone pulls together here when someone's in trouble. Validate that NP action first.
Okay.
Then you try to build the bridge. What if we thought about some of these bigger things, like making sure the power grid is reliable for everyone, or that pensions are secure as being like that, like taking care of our extended community, ensuring those essential things we all depend on are strong. You're linking the abstract policy to their concrete, local, nurturant values.
So it's less about winning an argument, more about activating the neural circuits they already have,
Yeah.
just maybe applying them more broadly.
Exactly. It's about gently nudging the NP frame to encompass more territory.
Okay, tool 2 is powerful. Let's move to our third practical micro tool. This one tackles complexity, which is huge in organizations and policy. Tool 3, concrete image over abstraction, metaphor makeover.
Yes. What it is, this is about consciously, habitually replacing dry, abstract jargon, things like synergistic optimization or cross-functional integration, with vivid, embodied sensory metaphors, metaphors people can actually picture.
Why is this so important? You mentioned a term earlier, hypocognition.
Right, hypocognition, great word. It basically means you lack the necessary ideas or mental structures, the frames, the concepts, to even think about something properly.
So if a policy or an idea is presented too abstractly, too fragmented,
your brain can't get a handle on it. You can't form a mental model. You literally lack the cognitive tools to process it effectively. This is why so many technical briefings or complex explanations just fail. They induce hypocognition.
when should we use this tool?
Use it whenever you're dealing with concepts that feel confusing, overly technical, or fragmented. If you can't easily draw a picture of it in your mind or explain it simply, it's probably too abstract. Time for a metaphor makeover.
And the source basis is that core idea about metaphor structuring reality.
Exactly. The sources stress this. Think about Einstein's relativity. How do we grasp space-time curvature? We use that metaphor of a bowling ball on a rubber sheet. We need these sensory, physical analogies to understand things we can't directly see or touch. New metaphors enable new understanding.
Okay, let's apply this. Common organizational challenge, budgeting, instead of abstract financial talk.
Right. Instead of saying we need to implement targeted resource allocation adjustments to optimize fiscal performance while maintaining core operational capacity, which means almost nothing.
Yeah, my eyes glazed over just hearing that.
Use a tangible image. The script. Think of our budget like a thermostat. Its job is to maintain a stable, healthy temperature for the whole organization, keeping things running smoothly. It's not a chainsaw for just hacking away randomly at vital parts.
Ah, okay. Thermostat versus chainsaw. One evokes balance, control, careful adjustment. The other evokes chaos, destruction, lack of thought.
Precisely. It makes the abstract concept of financial strategy immediately concrete and understandable. It frames the purpose of the budget.
And the watch out for here is letting abstraction run wild.
Yes. Relying on abstractions creates confusion, mental fog, and critically, it leaves a vacuum that your opponents can easily fill with their own simple, powerful, and often negative metaphors. Think about environmental debates, a complex policy proposal versus the simple gut punch image of job-killing regulations or a factory poisoning a river. Concrete images stick.
Let's do a metaphor makeover exercise. Let's tackle a common structural problem, maybe in nonprofits or advocacy groups. Issue silos.
Okay, issue silos. The unhelpful frame is right there in the name. It evokes these tall, separate concrete cylinders. Groups working on rivers over here, forests over there, healthcare somewhere else. Completely disconnected, often driven by how funding works.
And the result is they can't build a unified message about the common good. They seem fragmented.
Right. The metaphor itself reinforces the fragmentation. So the productive reframe needs to swap that silo image for one based on connection and interdependence.
Like what?
Think connected ecosystem or interdependent web, something that emphasizes the linkages.
So the new line we could use might sound like,
Instead of talking about breaking down silos, you'd say something like, we need to ensure all our efforts are connected because we know that a problem in the rivers inevitably affects the life in the forests, and pollution upstream impacts health downstream. These aren't separate issues, they're all vital parts of the same healthy ecosystem or the same community well-being.
that paints a completely different picture, from separate boxes to a living, interconnected system.
It shifts the whole framing from organizational structure to shared systemic necessity. Much more powerful.
Okay, we have these tools, but before we hit the practice lab, we have to address the ethics. This feels potentially manipulative. If we're deliberately picking words to trigger certain brain responses, aren't we just engaging in spin? Where's the line?
That's a really important question, and the sources tackle it head on. The fundamental point they make is, framing isn't optional. It's necessary. You literally cannot communicate anything, especially truth, without framing it.
Why not? Can't facts just be facts?
Because facts on their own are meaningless without context. They don't interpret themselves. If you just throw facts out there about the economy, climate change, whatever, people will automatically slot them into the mental frames they already have, usually those strict father or nurturant parent models. The facts get assimilated into the existing worldview.
Okay, so framing is unavoidable if you want to communicate effectively. So what separates ethical framing from unethical manipulation or spin?
Manipulation or spin is using framing techniques to deliberately hide the truth or to promote falsehoods. Often it involves using frames that actually contradict the speaker's own deeper values just for tactical advantage.
Whereas ethical influence?
Ethical influence uses framing to help the truth make sense. It provides the conceptual structure of the frame that allows the factual truth to be understood accurately, usually in line with a consistent moral system like the nurturant parent model, emphasizing empathy and responsibility.
So going back to that Iraq War example, pointing out that it became an occupation after mission accomplished was declared that's ethical framing.
Yes, because it uses a frame, occupation, to reveal a truth about the situation on the ground that contradicted the administration's preferred frame, mission accomplished. It aimed to align the language with the reality, not obscure it.
So smart, ethical communications is about changing minds by changing brains, activating truthful, positive neural circuits through conscious, honest repetition.
Exactly. The goal is clarity, accuracy, and facilitating genuine understanding based on shared values.
But let's be real. Constantly monitoring your language, avoiding negations, spotting their frame, asserting yours, doesn't that just lead to burnout? Is it actually sustainable?
That's a fair point. It is demanding, and strategic communication takes practice and energy. You can't be on like that 2 and 47.
So what's the realistic goal here?
It's really two things. First, recognize the high-stakes moments. The crucial meeting, the public debate, the difficult family conversation, and consciously apply these tools then. Choose your battles.
Okay, targeted application. What's the second thing?
Second, and maybe more importantly in the long run, is to gradually make your default way of speaking, your habitual language, more aligned with your core values and the frames you actually want to promote.
So it becomes less about conscious effort in the moment and more about having already built the right linguistic habits.
Exactly. If your everyday language consistently reflects frames of empathy, shared responsibility, and systemic thinking, you won't have to switch gears so much when the pressure is on.
And what are those foundational values that, according to these sources, underpin progressive thought, the nurture and parent model?
At the core, it's empathy and responsibility. Empathy, which the science suggests is physically wired into us through mirror neurons, we literally feel what others feel, especially when cooperating. And responsibility, which is the moral drive to act effectively on that empathy, to take care of each other and the systems we depend on.
So the ethical check is always, does my language align with care, with accuracy, with fairness, with promoting the common good and shared responsibility?
That's the compass. Those are the values that should guide your framing choices.
Okay, we've established the why the battle is over frames and the how, the toolkit. Now let's put it into practice. Welcome to the practice lab.
All right. We're going to give you two realistic scenarios, two tricky lines you might hear. Your job is to pause, think. What frame is that line activating? Then use the toolkit, especially Value First Open and the Moral Models lens, to craft a response that shifts the frame.
The goal is to push back effectively, either by activating that nurture and parent morality or by disrupting the strict father logic, using those concrete examples we talked about. Ready?
Okay. Prompt 1, reframing public resources. This line is classic strict father fuel, focusing only on the individual.
Here's the tricky line. We need to keep taxes low so hardworking families can keep the money they earned. You hear the SF activation. Individual effort, earned rewards, taxes as something being taken away.
Okay, so your goal. Affirm the value of hard work. Value First Open. But immediately pivot to the shared public foundation that makes earning possible. Reframe taxes as investment, not theft.
All right, take a moment. How would you respond?
Here's a model answer, pulling in those concrete examples. I absolutely agree that people should keep what they earn through hard work. And for that earning to even be possible, we also have to remember that it's American taxpayers together who fund the essential systems that underpin all private success. Things like the GPS network that delivery trucks rely on, the patent office that protects inventions, the commercial courts that enforce contracts. The private depends entirely on the public.
Nice. You validated earning, but immediately corrected the underlying premise about how earning happens. You shifted from taxes as theft to taxes as investment in the tools of success.
That's the goal. Frame control.
Okay, prompt 2. Countering a punitive frame. This one goes straight for the heart of the strict father view of poverty, blaming the individual's character.
Here's the tricky line. If people aren't prosperous, it's because they lack the discipline to be moral. We shouldn't be funding social programs that just reward bad behavior. Strong SF activation. Moral failure causes poverty, deservingness, punishment.
Okay, listener goal here. Shift the frame away from individual moral failing and towards systemic causes, NP view. And maybe use that biconceptual bridge. Find a value they respect, like accountability, and link it to compassion.
How'd you tackle that one?
All right, model answer using the biconceptual bridge. You know, we're definitely a society that believes in clear rules, and accountability, taking responsibility is important. But both accountability and compassion tell us we need to look honestly at the systemic reasons why people might struggle, things like crippling healthcare costs or schools in their neighborhoods that just don't have the resources. Before we assign blame, we need to make sure the system itself gives everyone a genuine opportunity to thrive.
Very good. See how you grabbed accountability, a word they value, but paired it with compassion, and then immediately shifted the focus from the individual's discipline to systemic causes like healthcare and education. That's central to the NP worldview.
And it potentially opens a door for that biconceptual listener. It doesn't just sound like a soft appeal they might reject out of hand.
Exactly. You're integrating values, creating a frame that resonates more broadly, making your point more accessible.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground. Cognitive science, neural circuits, moral models, practical tools, ethical considerations. What's the big takeaway for your daily life?
It boils down to this. Thought is physical. It's structured by frames. It operates largely through metaphor. And the constant struggle for public understanding isn't just about who has the best facts. It's about whose conceptual frames become dominant in people's minds.
And language is the key battleground. Phrases like tax relief or wasteful spending, repeated over and over, literally rewire brains.
They do. So if you want to communicate effectively, especially about things you care about, you need to be the one consciously asserting and repeating your frames, the ones grounded in your values.
So here's your 60-second action for today, a small step you can take right now. Commit to trying the value first open just once today. In one conversation, maybe one where you anticipate a difference of opinion, could be at work, could be with family, before you state your view, find one point of genuine shared value you can agree on. Start there. Build that bridge first.
It's a small shift, but it can make a huge difference.
And finally, as always, we leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. This one comes from that idea of institutionalized metaphors. We talked about time is money.
Right. How deeply embedded that is in our culture. We pay by the hour, save time, spend time, waste time, budget time. We treat time like a finite commodity.
And the sources point out, this isn't universal. It shapes our entire sense of agency, productivity. In cultures where time isn't framed like money, people might talk about constraints differently, not, I don't have enough time, but maybe I couldn't find a path to it, or the opportunity didn't connect. The limitation is seen as pathways or connections, not a depleting resource.
So consider this. If a single metaphor like time is money fundamentally shapes how you get paid, how you feel about your day, how your workplace functions, what other big institutionalized metaphors are you living inside without even realizing it?
What if society constantly frames life as competition, or argument as war, or knowledge as property to be hoarded? How do those hidden metaphors shape our choices, our institutions, our sense of what's possible?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Once you start tuning your frame detector, not just to political speech, but to the everyday metaphors structuring your own life, you begin to see how much of your perceived reality is actually a constructed frame. And frames, well, frames can be changed.
Something to think about.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us into the crucial science of framing.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.